Chapter 192. The moment the final barrier surrounding the World Tree blessing collapsed, the entire region descended into madness. Thousands of participants who had been waiting for this exact moment transformed into streaks of light as they rushed toward the enormous golden tree. Nobody cared about appearances anymore. The elegant geniuses abandoned their composure. The arrogant young masters forgot their pride. Even the calmest cultivators accelerated with everything they had because everyone understood the same truth. The first opportunities were often the most valuable. Golden mist covered the sky while ancient energy flooded every corner of the world tree. The massive fruits hanging among distant branches remained hidden behind layers of divine light that distorted vision and spiritual perception. Even participants who specialized in eye techniques found themselves unable to see clearly. The world tree protected its treasures from greedy eyes, just as it had done countless times throughout history. Tony crossed the barrier and immediately activated heavenly mirage steps. His figure blurred before disappearing from the sight of nearby participants. Several Sea Tribe warriors who had been watching him carefully immediately chased after him, while numerous human geniuses followed from behind. To an outsider, it looked as though Tony had become the center of attention the moment everyone entered. Tony simply laughed inwardly. He understood Luca's intentions perfectly. The old woman never expected 65 Sea Tribe members to kill him immediately. Such a thing would be impossible even if they attacked together. Their real mission was obvious: delay him, distract him, force him into meaningless battles, while others claimed the true opportunities hidden within the world tree. Unfortunately for them, Tony had already decided what mattered most: the seeds. Nothing else mattered. The spirit had repeated the same warning so many times that even Tony could no longer ignore it. Whatever those seeds were, they possessed enough value to make a mysterious being from another world repeatedly emphasize their importance. The landscape around him changed continuously as he advanced. Ancient forests appeared and vanished. Golden rivers crossed his path before disappearing into the distance. Massive roots larger than mountains stretched through the terrain like giant dragons, sleeping beneath the earth. The entire world felt unreal, as though reality itself had been reconstructed according to rules older than human civilization. Eventually, the terrain opened into an enormous stone region surrounded by towering walls. Participants continued arriving one after another. Mark Smith arrived. Emma Rock arrived. The Bald Monk arrived. The Sea Tribe warriors arrived. More and more people gathered as confusion spread throughout the crowd. The location appeared completely sealed. Ancient walls stretched toward the horizon in every direction without revealing a single gate or passage. Countless participants searched frantically for hidden entrances. Some climbed the walls. Others activated detection techniques. Several formation experts even examined every stone they could find. Nothing worked. There was no visible path forward. The only unusual object inside the entire area was an ancient stone well standing silently at the center. Tony ignored everything else and walked directly toward it. Naturally, this attracted attention. After all, everyone else was investigating the walls, while Tony appeared interested in the least impressive object present. He stepped onto the edge of the well and looked downward. Then he waited. Lily stared at his back impatiently. Even though she wanted to stop him, she did not take any action. She was angry at him because he had been ignoring her for days. The surrounding participants gradually became impatient. Several Sea Tribe warriors watched him with open suspicion. Others began wondering whether the Golden Flag champion had discovered some hidden clue. Even Emma occasionally glanced in his direction, while continuing her own observations. Tony remained completely focused on the darkness below. The spirit had already warned him that many opportunities inside the world tree required timing rather than strength. Charging forward blindly often produced worse results than waiting. Eventually, a faint sound drifted upward from deep within the well. The moment the sound reached his ears, his eyes brightened. Without explaining anything, he immediately jumped. The crowd reacted instantly. Several participants rushed toward the well. By the time they reached the edge, Tony had already vanished. There was no splash. The darkness swallowed him completely. The scene immediately caused a chain reaction. One participant jumped, then another, then 5 more. Soon dozens of figures were disappearing into the well, as everyone realized the obvious truth. The well was not a decoration. It was the entrance. Tony felt neither falling nor movement. His consciousness drifted through a strange space where time seemed meaningless. Ancient images flashed before his eyes. Cities rose and collapsed. Kingdoms flourished and vanished. Countless unfamiliar faces appeared and disappeared within an endless flow of history. When his vision finally cleared, he discovered that the world around him had changed completely. The scent of perfume filled the air. Soft music drifted through the room. Silk curtains surrounded a luxurious bed, large enough to accommodate several people. Beautiful lanterns illuminated ornate decorations that reflected extraordinary wealth. Tony sat upright slowly while staring at his surroundings. He examined the room again, then examined it a third time. The conclusion remained unchanged. He frowned. "Don't tell me." His gaze moved toward the doorway where several elegantly dressed women walked through a corridor, while laughing among themselves. A long silence followed. Finally, Tony rubbed his forehead and sighed. Out of all the places in an ancient inheritance, I somehow wake up inside a pleasure house. The system spirit coughed lightly before answering. Technically speaking, this is not a real place. The participants have entered a dream realm. Their consciousness has been projected into different lives from an ancient era connected to the world tree. Tony narrowed his eyes immediately. The important part was not the pleasure house. The important part was the phrase different lives. You are telling me everyone arrived somewhere different? The spirit nodded. The experiences will not be the same. The identities will not be the same. The choices will not be the same. Every participant will awaken in a different role inside this ancient world. Tony's expression gradually became serious, because that explanation created a dangerous possibility. If every participant experienced different lives, then some would receive opportunities, while others received disasters. Some would gain advantages, others would lose time. Tony slowly stood from the luxurious bed. Where are you going? Tony's ears tingled as he heard the seductive tone. He slowly turned his head and swallowed hard. Oh my God. Chapter 193. Where are you going? Tony had barely pushed himself upright from the enormous silk bed. A pair of soft arms suddenly wrapped around his waist from behind, stopping him before he could even place his feet on the floor. The embrace was not forceful. It did not need to be. Whoever owned those arms clearly believed she had never needed strength to stop him before. Leaving so fast. Do you not want to do that with me? The voice carried obvious dissatisfaction. It sounded as though she had discovered a child trying to sneak away, rather than a man attempting to leave a room. Tony turned slowly. The woman standing behind him was undeniably beautiful. Her long black hair flowed across her shoulders, her eyes carried a lazy charm, and her loose silk robe looked as though she had thrown it on carelessly after waking up. There was no grand conspiracy hidden in her expression, no secret scheme waiting beneath the surface. The only thing visible was annoyance. Pure annoyance. She clearly did not like the fact that he was leaving. Seems like I have a wedding today, Tony answered as he retrieved a fragment of blurry memory. The woman's face immediately fell. Again, it was the same reaction one would expect from a child hearing terrible news. Why are you still thinking about that? She moved directly in front of him before he could stand completely, then sat on the edge of the bed. She blocked the path toward the door as naturally as someone claiming ownership over a favorite chair. Tony stared at her. She stared back. Neither moved. Finally, she folded her arms. You are not going. Tony almost laughed. The confidence in her voice suggested that this conversation had happened many times before. Unfortunately for her, the person sitting before her was not the same fool who had apparently spent years running after her. They are waiting. She immediately shrugged. Let them wait. Tony looked at her for several seconds. The woman looked completely serious. There was not a single complicated thought hidden behind her answer. The woman scooted closer and rested her chin against his shoulder. She spoke in a tone that sounded almost sleepy. Stay here today. Just today. You can deal with all those annoying people tomorrow. Tony shook his head. The wedding is today. She frowned immediately. Then let them cancel it. The answer came so naturally that Tony could not help staring at her. The woman misunderstood the look and smiled brightly. Clearly, she thought she was winning. See? That is a good idea. If they cancel the wedding, nobody can force you anymore. The original owner of this body truly was hopeless. Any intelligent person could see that the woman was not offering solutions. She simply wanted him to stay. The woman suddenly noticed him reaching for his outer robe and immediately grabbed his sleeve. You are still leaving? Tony nodded. Her expression became increasingly dissatisfied. Without hesitation, she pulled harder and forced him back onto the bed. She received 1,000 spirit stones for this one task. If she failed, the consequences would be severe. That is why she was putting her entire body at stake, to keep Tony with her. The lady named Maria started kissing his neck and slowly moved down his body. After 5 more minutes of kissing, she pulled off her lower garments. Oh, you came prepared, Tony commented after seeing her shaved area. Stop talking, Maria shouted while pressing his head between her slender thighs. Like an obedient student, Tony licked her, his tongue twisting with purpose. He continued to massage her mounds and pinch her beak without stopping the rhythmic motions. After 5 more minutes, Tony shifted his focus to the top portion. He sucked her beak while inserting his long, thick fingers inside her. Suddenly, Tony thought of a curious thing and immediately activated his supervision. What are you doing? Maria asked with a confused face as Tony stopped abruptly. Instead of answering her question, Tony placed his thumb on her beep and inserted his middle finger inside her. Instantly, Maria's body began vibrating like a magnet. What are you doing? Stop now, Maria cried out as her body trembled with lust. Who said the G-spot is a myth? Tony uttered while rubbing his middle finger on the particular spot inside her. Maria started crying out as Tony played with her body. Please stop. I beg you, please. Maria started pleading with him as Tony played with her body. Tony continued his remote sensing activity with the help of his special vision. He finally stopped after seeing tears in her eyes caused by lust. His entire hand was already drenched with a transparent, wet liquid. As Tony looked at his wet fingers, Maria slapped his face and directly forced him to insert his beep inside her. You bastard. Where did you learn that? Because of you, I am unable to walk properly, Maria yelled in an aggrieved tone. Instead of apologizing, Tony threatened her with one more session of vibrating action. She became a silent kitten after hearing his warning. That is my girl, Tony said while thrusting into her with a 90-degree angle. While looking into her eyes and playing with her beep, Tony enjoyed the sensation. Young master, the sun is reaching the peak. We must hurry to the marriage hall, the servant shouted, weeping because he could not bear the noise of moaning. Someone needs to hurry, Maria announced with a kittenish voice. Yes, I need to hurry, but first I will finish this. Tony directly moved her body upside down and pulled her hips back toward him. What? You still want to attend the wedding? Maria shrieked with slight resistance. I know your tricks, lady. I am just playing with you before leaving. Now, let us focus. Some people call it doggy style, but for us, it is a horse race because I need to hurry, Tony replied while holding her hips firmly. The loud smacking sounds and deep shrieking sounds of Maria filled the entire room. His movements were fast and relentless. Maria tried to say something, but only a moaning noise released from her. Chapter 194. Wait, please don't go, Maria Lynn begged while covering her chest with silk cloth. Tony ignored her. You are still going? He nodded, and Maria stood to follow him toward the door. Don't go. Tony continued dressing, though she trailed behind him. Seriously, don't go. He continued to ignore her. She grabbed his sleeve again. You never used to ignore me. The original owner probably never ignored her. Not once, which explained why she looked genuinely shocked. She stared at him for several moments, finally asking the question that had been bothering her from the beginning. What is wrong with you today? Tony smiled. Nothing. He opened the door. Outside, a servant knelt with tears flowing from his eyes. The moment he saw Tony, relief exploded across his face. Master, I. The servant struggled to speak. Tony held up his palm. Let's go. The servant smiled like an idiot. After a short ride on a wooden carriage, he arrived at the hall. As Tony followed the servant through the corridor and stepped into the ceremonial hall, he felt as though he had entered a different world. The scale of the wedding far exceeded anything he had imagined. Hundreds of floating spirit lamps illuminated the enormous hall with a warm golden glow, while countless jade pillars stretched toward a ceiling, painted with ancient divine beasts and celestial formations. Red silk decorations flowed from pillar to pillar like rivers of fire, and every table was filled with influential guests, whose names alone could shake entire regions. For a few seconds, Tony stood stunned. The original owner's fragmented memories had prepared him for a wedding, but not for this. The entire city seemed to have gathered here. Representatives from powerful clans occupied the front rows. Merchants with wealth rivaling kingdoms sat beside famous cultivators. Elders from numerous organizations watched from elevated platforms, while musicians played ceremonial melodies in the background. The atmosphere felt grand. Within moments, hundreds of eyes landed directly upon him. The music and the ceremony continued, yet whispers spread like wildfire. So he finally came. I thought he ran away. The Sky family almost cancelled the marriage. The Clark family has completely lost face today. I heard he spent the entire night with Madame Lan. That fool truly does not know how fortunate he is. Many guests did not bother lowering their voices. Several Sky family elders openly glared at him, and some younger disciples looked as though they wanted to challenge him on the spot. Many members of the Clark family appeared embarrassed. Tony suddenly understood why the servant had looked ready to cry earlier. This was not simply a wedding, but a political alliance and a public event. This was a gathering witnessed by the entire region, and he had nearly destroyed it before it began. The servant beside him lowered his head so deeply that he almost looked guilty by association. Young master, please keep walking. Tony finally snapped out of his thoughts and continued forward. The crowd naturally parted before him. Many guests looked curious, while others looked angry. Yet the angriest gaze came from a single person seated near the ceremonial altar, the Clark family patriarch. The old man's expression remained calm, and Tony wisely avoided eye contact. Several attendants rushed forward and placed the ceremonial golden crown upon his head. The crown was an ancient treasure passed down through generations of the Clark family. The moment it settled into place, countless formation runes lit up across its surface. The surrounding guests relaxed slightly. At least the groom was present, the ceremony could continue, and nobody would become the laughingstock of the century. The officiating elder looked as though he had just escaped death. Without wasting another second, he resumed the interrupted ceremony and guided Tony toward the seat beside the bride. Tony sat. Finally, he looked at her properly. The woman sitting beside him was beautiful. She possessed a beauty that naturally created distance between herself and others. Her silver ceremonial robes seemed woven from moonlight, while the phoenix crown resting upon her head gave her an elegant and noble appearance. Everything about her felt elegant and refined. Yet the most noticeable thing was not her appearance. It was her expression of annoyance, as though somebody had forced her to attend a meeting she never wanted. The moment Tony sat beside her, she did not even turn her head. She simply continued staring forward while the elder recited ceremonial blessings. Several moments passed, then her voice quietly entered his ears. You actually came. Tony smiled. I know. A shocking development. The bride finally glanced toward him. The look she gave him could probably freeze a lake. Do not flatter yourself. I was simply surprised that you remembered where the wedding hall was located. Tony almost laughed. Interesting. Very interesting. The woman clearly possessed no intention of acting like a gentle bride. The ceremony continued as the guests watched and the musicians played. Meanwhile, the bride continued attacking him quietly. Without your grandfather, you would not even qualify to carry my shoes. Tony turned toward her. The woman remained completely serious. If not for his reputation, my family would not even consider this marriage. Tony nodded thoughtfully. I see. The bride frowned at the unexpected reaction. Normally such words would provoke anger, but he looked genuinely interested. The woman narrowed her eyes suspiciously, but Tony simply smiled. The truth was that he was not offended. How could he be, when the woman was ridiculously beautiful? When beautiful women insulted people, they somehow sounded less threatening. The bride immediately noticed his smile. Why are you grinning like an idiot? Tony answered honestly. Because you are beautiful. The bride froze. The surrounding guests remained unaware because the conversation stayed hidden beneath the ceremonial chants, yet the woman clearly heard every word. For several seconds she simply stared at him before turning away. Shameless. Tony laughed quietly as the ceremony continued. The bride occasionally glanced toward him. The more she observed him, the stranger he felt. This was not the same Tony she remembered. The original Tony would have spent the entire ceremony looking guilty, depressed, or distracted. This version appeared completely relaxed. Eventually, Tony spoke again. I like you. The bride nearly turned her neck too quickly, her eyes widening. For the first time since he arrived, genuine surprise appeared on her face. What? Tony looked completely calm. I said I like you. The woman stared at him as though he had suddenly become insane, before looking around to make sure nobody else heard. What kind of ridiculous game are you playing now? No game. Tony shrugged casually, though the bride remained suspicious. Tony continued. I already ditched her. The woman's expression changed. Who? The lady from the pleasure house. The answer immediately caught her attention, and for several moments she simply watched him, trying to determine whether he was joking. Tony continued calmly. I will not be visiting her again. The bride genuinely did not know how to react, as the statement felt impossible. The entire city knew how obsessed he had been. The entire city knew how much trouble he had caused because of that woman. Now he was casually announcing that everything had ended. The bride eventually recovered. Unfortunately for Tony, her response was not particularly romantic. Even if that is true, I still will not let you sleep with me. Tony laughed. The bride immediately regretted speaking, and a faint trace of red appeared on her ears. The damage had been done, and Tony looked even more amused. The woman glared at him. If you are imagining some miraculous future where I suddenly become a loving wife, abandon that fantasy immediately. Tony continued smiling, and the bride became increasingly annoyed. The officiating elder finally reached the last stage of the ceremony, before either side could create more trouble. An attendant presented the sacred marriage thread. The entire hall immediately became quiet. Hundreds of guests focused upon the ceremonial platform for this most important moment. Tony accepted the thread, and the bride reluctantly extended her hand. Their eyes met briefly, and then Tony tied it. The marriage was complete. Instantly, the hall exploded with sound. Massive drums thundered throughout the venue, and musicians began playing celebratory songs. Spiritual fireworks erupted above the hall as guests stood and applauded. Elders released relieved sighs. The Sky family alliance was secured, the Clark family reputation was saved, and the wedding had succeeded. Yet beneath the applause, countless young men silently cursed their misfortune. Many stared toward the bride with envy burning inside their hearts. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update as soon as possible. See you then.